So it is already 5, so maybe we will start, okay? We have today our Gita Talks class. It is the class devoted to Bhagavad Gita to learn it online. Every week we are meeting in the Zoom to study Bhagavad Gita, and we are having 3 lecturers for this. Mahayogi Prabhu, and then Madhusudan Maharaj will be giving and making lectures, and after Devashish Prabhu from London. And today Mahayogi Prabhu is with us. He is a truth seeker who devotes half of his life to spiritual search. Knowledge, he studied Vedic knowledge for more than 40 time. He had a renounced living in Mexico, and he's a teacher in one of the universities in Mexico, and also publishing and editing books which are devoted to Vedic knowledge. And also he is working with the studio in Los Angeles, which also to making spiritual content connected to Mahabharata and Vedic knowledges. And so today he's with us, and we will have a talk devoted to Bhagavad Gita, to the 2nd chapter, actually the second chapter. So let's start, Mahayogi Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Braja Sundari, and let me just give a short invocation. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dugda Gopalanandana Parto Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitam Ritam Mahat Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva Eko Mantras Tasya Namami Jani Karma Pyekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So, I'm trying to speak a little bit about Bhagavad Gita, and we're in the 2nd chapter. Last week, we did about 20 verses of the 2nd chapter, and today I want to try to do another 20 or so verses. The 2nd chapter is kind of a difficult chapter because here it's sometimes called the contents of the Gita summarized. The 1st chapter is generally called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, but sometimes it's called Sanya Darshan. So Sanya Darshan means we set the scene. We see the armies on the battle of Kurukshetra ready to fight. Arjuna Vishada Yoga is an interesting way to put it, because normally we think of yoga as some kind of a practice. In fact, the word yoga means something more like a path. The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word for yoke, which means you can think of that as something to put 2 things together, a yoking. When you drive oxen, the yoke is the wooden thing that goes on the back of the cows as they go along, or the bulls. So a yoke is something that holds 2 things together. It's often explained that what we're trying to do is link the soul with God. And that's the purpose of yoga, to create a relationship between the soul and God. That's really kind of the purpose of yoga. But you can also relate the word to another Sanskrit word, which is yojana. And yojana is a unit of measure. We talk about it's so many yojanas from one planetary system to the next, but normally a yojana means a yoking. So when you take two oxen and you join them together with a yoke, how far can they walk in one day? That's a yojana. It means something like in English, we have the word league, like 20,000 leagues under the sea. A league is about as far as you can walk in a day. A yojana is about as far as two oxen yoked together can walk in a day. So sometimes the unit of measure for a yojana is given as 5 miles, and sometimes it's given as 7 miles. And there's some argument about that. There's some flexibility. But another way to look at it is you can think of a yojana as a journey, a day's journey, or a path. So that the word yoga, in a sense, it really means path. And why would anyone be interested in the path of lamentation, Arjuna Vishada Yoga? Well, oftentimes today in modern psychology, we hear about hitting bottom, that you can't really find your true spiritual path until you've experienced what St. John of the Cross called the dark night of the soul, where you go so far down that you can't go any farther down. Why? Because that's when your need is so great that you're open for advice. Normally, we think that everything is fine, everything is perfect, I have everything under control. If you try to give some advice to a younger person, you might find that the younger person knows everything. And what they don't know, they can find on Google, so they don't need mommy, and they don't need daddy, and they don't need a teacher. Why would they need a teacher? They know everything. But sometimes in our lives, we face adversity. And the adversity is sometimes so difficult that we can't overcome it by ourselves. And we realize, I need some help. So the path of desperation, this is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. That's the first chapter in the Gita, and it overlaps the second chapter a little bit. So in the beginning of the second chapter, Arjuna admits that he's bewildered. He can't go on. He needs help. And he's very fortunate that sitting in the chariot in front of him, he has the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, as his guru, and his guru can guide him. But as Krishna unfolds the eternal truth, the perennial knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, we discover that the same position that Arjuna had with Arjuna as his chariot driver is available to us insofar as the Paramatma is said to be seated with the soul within the same body. The Mandukya Upanishad explains that the soul and the Paramatma are like two birds sitting in a tree. And And the one bird is busy trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree, whereas the other bird is simply observing. But if the enjoying bird turns to the observant bird, he can discover the truth. So if the soul turns to the Paramatma, just as Arjuna turns to Krishna, then the soul gets the guidance he needs. And this is what gets unfolded or explained in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Normally, we call this Atma Gyan. But when we speak about Atma Gyan, it's not simply knowledge of the individual soul, but it's also knowledge of the Paramatma, or the Supreme Soul. So Atma Gyan includes Paramatma Gyan. So Krishna tells Arjuna that his lamentation is superficial, that he's not seeing things correctly. And by means of Atma Gyan, Krishna imparts what you might call yoga vision, or Atma vision, in the sense that according to how we see our world, that affects how we act. So, for example, a businessman sees everything as money. If he looks at a field of wheat or blue sky, he thinks, how can I exploit that? How can I make money? Maybe I can write my advertisement in the blue sky so that everybody will see it and buy my product. So businessman sees everything in terms of money. A soldier sees things in terms of strategy and conquest. This plain would be a nice place for a battle. That mountain over there is good for observation. A womanizer sees everything in terms of how to conquer a woman's heart, how to seduce her. What lies can I tell? What flattery can I use? And he's always on the lookout for women. A saintly person sees God everywhere, in everything. So how to be able to see God everywhere and in everything, and at the same time do our daily life, is the real subject of the Gita. So in that sense, the Bhagavad Gita is not a sectarian book. It's not promoting a particular religion, but it's helping us to see things properly. It's teaching us a way of looking at the world that will be helpful for us. It's not telling you that if you don't go to church on Sunday, you will go to hell. But Krishna is saying, you must learn to see the world like this. You must understand that the soul is self-evident. And so he begins describing the nature of the soul in the second chapter, or the self, if you like, or the Atma. I like the word Atma. And he tells Arjuna that the special characteristic of the Atma is that it evades material perception. You cannot know it empirically. Also, it pervades the entire body. So he may kill the bodies of other soldiers in doing his duty, but he can't kill their souls. The soul is eternal, just as God is eternal. And spiritual life means to discover the relationship between the two and to conduct your life in a practical way with that realization in mind. So he tells Arjuna that the kings present are all immortal. The body can be killed, but not the soul. Temporary things perish. So the body perishes, but temporary things have no substantial reality. The soul is substantial because it's eternal, and God exists eternally as well. And then he comes to the curious argument that the soul takes on different bodies according to its karma. And he says, Vasangshi jirnani jata vihaya navani grinati naru parani tata sharinani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sangyati navani dehi. That just as you give up old clothes and put on new ones, so the soul gives up old bodies and attains new ones. So death means leaving behind an old and useless body, just as you give up a set of worn cloth. And we leave old bodies and put on new ones, just as we change our clothes. Arjuna is worried about his grandfather, Bhishma. But Bhishma, he was blessed that he could live as long as he wanted to. In a sense, he's immortal. But as Bhishma enters into old age, he looks around and he sees that all his friends and associates have long since passed away. They've long since died. And so he's looking for the right moment to leave his body. And Krishna is explaining that by dying in battle, Bhishma can finally leave behind his old body, and he'll accept the body of a devata, of a god in the higher planets among his brothers, the Vasus, who were cursed to walk the earth for a time. And Bhishma was cursed to walk the earth for a longer time. So, because the Kurukshetra war is assisting this natural scheme of events, Arjuna should not give up his duty. He should understand how to see things properly, but he should do his duty anyway. And so this verse, coupled with Dekhino sminyata dehe komaram yovanam jaratata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati, gives us a strong argument for reincarnation or metempsychosis, as it's sometimes called, metamorphosis. And as we said before, we see how the worm transforms into a butterfly. All our life, we transform from childhood to old age. Plato considered this an argument for reincarnation, and he felt that since you can remember and reflect back on your entire life, then that must mean that the soul has duration. So this is a very strong argument. And Prabhupada comments that how does the mechanism of being transferred from one body to the next go on? He says it's possible by the grace of the super soul. Prabhupada says the super soul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul, just as one friend fulfills the desire of another. And again, he gives the example of the two birds sitting in a tree. And that's an example from the Upanishads, which you'll find in all the Bhagavad Gita commentaries. Krishna continues, Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, nachainam kled ayantyapo, nashoshiyate marta. That the Atma, it can't be destroyed. It can't be cut into weapons, burned by fire, dried by the wind. And so, achedyo yam adhayo yam akledyo shoshevacha. Our recording was paused. So not being affected by any of these weapons, Krishna continues to try to enlighten Arjuna in the proper vision of Atmagyan. And he says, the soul can't be burned, it's insoluble, it can't be dried. Then he says something interesting. Nitya sarvagata stanur means eternally, sarvagata. The soul is everywhere. That means in every atom that you breathe in and breathe out, there's billions and billions of souls. I use the word atom loosely, but for example, the Jains, they wear a mask because they don't want to kill unnecessary bacteria by breathing them in, because they're also living souls. So there are living souls everywhere throughout the universe. If you now they're looking at craters on Mars, and they find that there's dried lake water there. There's no more water at the present moment that can be seen visibly, but they can tell, well, this used to be a lake. And lake means water, and water means life. We don't know what kind of life there might have been on Mars, but water implies life, and water is an element you can find throughout the universe. So we know things live in water. They live in oxygen. Oxygen is plentiful throughout the universe. So in a higher sense, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj used to explain, consciousness is the background of all material existence. And it's not that matter produces consciousness, but it's the other way around. The matter is like an idea that floats in the sea of consciousness. It's like an iceberg floating around in the sea of consciousness. So this is a different point of view from the normal point of view that Arjuna is used to, which is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha in a kind of a material sense. You do your material dharma or religion. You get your artha or wealth and satisfy your desires or kama. And in the end, you get freedom from this life, moksha. But those are very sort of petty ideas of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So the universe is filled everywhere. Prabhupada comments, the word sarvagata is significant because there's no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land and the water and the air, within the earth, and even within fire. And the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says the Atma is indestructible with eternal qualities. So there's a certain amount of repetition here, but you can take each single verse of the Bhagavad Gita and find eternal wisdom there, which is applicable to anyone in any religion or philosophy. It's not a sectarian book. And for this reason, Krishna repeats himself a little bit for emphasis. Avyakto yam achintyo yam avikaryo yam uchate. Tasmad evam vidit vainam nanu shochitam arhasi. The soul is avyakta. And that's an interesting word because sometimes it gets translated as invisible. But the vyakta means what's manifest. So Prabhupada comments, it's not perceptible by the material senses. It's beyond logic, achintya. So normally scientists and philosophers, we try to apply a certain kind of epistemology or way of understanding knowledge, and we try to be objective. But in point of fact, there is no such thing as objective epistemology. Whatever method you use to get knowledge will be colored by your mind and senses. So nothing is entirely objective. all epistemology is subjective. This is found in quantum mechanics when we try to study something like light. What is light? Is it a wave, or are these particles of something that's moving at incredible speed? Well, if you could stop a light beam for a moment and examine it, you can kind of look at it as a particle. And so scientists call that a photon. And sometimes they call it a wave. But what they discover is the manner that you go about perceiving something affects its reality. If you try to perceive it as a wave, you can see it as a wave. If you try to see it as a particle, you can see it as a particle, but it depends on your point of view. So my point is, epistemology is really highly subjective. And here Krishna says, you cannot apply mundane epistemology to the Atma. Why? Because you are an Atma. So you're trying to go out with your intelligence and then create some sort of experiment for the mundane senses, the vegetable eye, the ears, and then gather evidence and turn that into statistics that you can measure, so that later the mind can look at it and the intelligence can analyze it. But the self itself, who is realizing this so-called objective process, cannot distance itself from the reality of the Atma. This is described by David Hume, who is a British philosopher. He said, it's something like if you go outside your house and look in the window to see if you're home, trying to find the self with material senses. It's like if I say, okay, I want to see if Mahayogi is in there. So I'm going to go outside my house and open the window and look in. I don't see Mahayogi. Well, then the soul doesn't exist. But it's a very, very strange argument that separating yourself from yourself in order to be objective and see the self, it's not really possible. It's a sort of a logical paradox. But in the West, we try to adhere to this paradox, thinking that that will give you the best logical conclusion. Whereas in the East, the Atma is taken as an axiomatic truth. It's a self-evident truth. Unless you're Buddhist, of course. Intelligence functions through doubt. If I have a problem, say we're in a Zoom meeting, we have a problem with a meeting. We have to think, well, what's the problem? Is it my camera? Is it my computer? Maybe it's my internet connection. No, Zoom is down around the world. It's that. And what you do is you eliminate all the possibilities till you come to the truth. In Sanskrit, this is called neti neti. So who am I? If I want to know who am I have to eliminate what I'm not. So I can say, well, am I this hand? No, because I can cut off the hand and I'm still here. What about, am I this face? No, because I can burn away the face, but I'm still here. Am I the little boy? Well, Krishna points that out. He says, you know, Komaram Yovanam Jara, from boyhood to youth to old age. Am I the little boy? No, little boy's gone. Am I the young man? Nope, young man is gone. Well, okay, I'm an American. No, because I live in Mexico, I'm not an American. Okay, well, I'm an English speaker. No, because I speak Spanish. So by no, I try to come to understand, well, then who am I? The Buddhists take things a step further. They just keep going, no, 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 until they come to nirvana, which means nowhere, which is really cool, because how do you get to nowhere? How do you become nothing? It goes against all logic. But if you have a special kind of logic and seeing the world, maybe you can get there. Maybe you can get to nowhere. In fact, nirvana means the death of the soul. I want to make the soul non-existent. It's like the story of the Buddhist doctor. I've told this story many times. It's one of my favorite jokes. The mother comes to the doctor and says, my boy has a headache. It's a severe migraine. What can you do for him? Okay, give him aspirin. Aspirin doesn't work, you know. Okay, give him an injection. The injection doesn't work. Nothing works. Then somebody says, well, you could try the Buddhist doctor. He has a special solution. And okay, so the mother takes her boy to the Buddhist doctor, and the doctor looks at him and says, I think I can do something. Go take a walk. Mother goes to the park. She's watching the birds. It's a beautiful day. Finally, a couple hours later, she comes back, sees the doctor. Oh, the doctor will see you. And the doctor says, okay, no more headache. Really? That's right. Your boy has no headache. Oh boy, you're really a good doctor. How did you do that? Well, he's dead. I killed him. But he has no more headache. Headache is gone. So this is the Buddhist solution to the soul. We eliminate the ego, we eliminate the soul, we eliminate the problem. Or as Joseph Stalin used to say, no man, no problem. So this is a very extreme kind of conclusion. And in part, this is why Buddhism is no longer popular in India, because the Buddhists have a good program. They say, all right, we have the eightfold path of right understanding, right, see things properly, think about them properly, right speech, don't offend other people, good karma, and proper concentration, mindfulness, and samadhi. Now, mindfulness is very popular today, but there's the mindfulness of the cat, right? Anybody who has a cat, you can watch your cat being mindful. The cat will stare out the window at a bird for 5 hours every day. And one day, the cat will come inside with the bird. And he'll give you the bird as a present and say, you are my master. This is my present for you. Here's my bird. But how does the cat do that? Then there's the mindfulness of the dog, which is different. A dog can hunt, but a dog can enjoy the sunset. Also, you're thinking about, I saw a cartoon recently. Here's a dog and here's a man, and they're looking at the sunset, and the man is thinking money, 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 sex. Money, 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 sex, power, power, money, money, money. And the dog is just watching the sun go down. So that's mindfulness, right? There's the mindfulness of the cat, the mindfulness of the dog. Then there's the mindfulness of the Buddha, which you would think would be like on a higher level. But the idea is to achieve nothing. And in India, that became very unpopular, especially as soon as Shankaracharya came along and reinstated the Bhagavad Gita and told people, look, Here's Atma Gyan. Read the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, his conclusion, in a way, it's kind of similar to the Buddha. The Buddha, he says, it's zero. 0 times 0 equals 0. 0 plus 0 equals 0. Think about it. 0 minus, remove all the 0 from 0. Wow. But Shankaracharya came along and he said, no, it's infinite. Infinite times infinite. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamad Udaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. You take the infinite and remove it from the infinite. What do you have? It's still infinite. And people were like, very nice. I'm liking Shankaracharya. He's good. And Buddha sort of vanished from the Indian subcontinent. So avyakta, in one sense, avyakta, it means unmanifest. We come from the unmanifest and we return to the unmanifest. But you can look at avyakta in different ways. So the Atma is not perceptible by the material senses. It's a chintya. And here's where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in. So the scientists, they can't figure out, how do you divorce the self from matter long enough to perceive the self? Can't be done. It's a chintya. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. He said there's some relationship between material energy and spiritual energy, but exactly where the dividing line goes, it's beyond reason. Immanuel Kant, he wrote a criticism of reason, and his point was to justify spiritual reality, but he ended up convincing everyone that, well, if you can't understand spirit through reason, then the spirit doesn't exist, because everything must be understood by reason. But Kant was trying to put limits to reason, just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, it's inconceivable, achintya. So how do we get to the soul? Well, we can understand the nature of the Atma with the help of Shruti, or Vedic wisdom, and also with the help of the Guru. And in that way, the ultimate Guru is the Paramatma, and the Paramatma is the inner voice that gives us guidance and says, yes, it is what you're searching for. It's real. It's not a fiction. It's reality. This is the basic argument that Krishna gives about the soul. You can expand on this, and books have been written. But he moves on. He tells Arjuna, but even if you are a Buddhist, even if you think that the soul is something that just comes into existence and then disappears, you shouldn't lament for that, because that's the nature of life. One who has taken his birth is sure to die. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha. And after death, you're sure to take birth again. So the body comes and goes. Your thing is to do your duty, your svadharma. So he starts bringing his argument back around to a kind of a moral conclusion. And you can divide this part of the Bhagavad Gita then into 3 sections. One where he's explaining Atma Gyan. And then the second part, he's telling Arjuna, there's a moral conclusion here. You have to do what you have to do. As Popeye once said, I am what I am, and it's all what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. So you're Arjuna the warrior man. You can't change your nature. You have to do what you have to do. There's the story of the scorpion and the frog, where the it's raining, and the scorpion says, I'm going to drown. Mr. Frog, help me, please. And the frog says, you want me to do what? And the scorpion says, well, you know how to swim. Let me jump on your back and we'll swim across to the other side. There's dry land. And the frog says, you're out of your mind. You're a scorpion. I know you. I know what you do. You have that stinger thing on your back. You're going to sting me, aren't you? No, I promise I won't do that. Okay, all right. So jump on my back. And the frog starts swimming across the pond, and he's going along and going along, and suddenly he can't feel his legs. He's going, ow, you did something. I can't feel my legs. I can't move. We're going down. Blah, 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 blah. What did you do? And the scorpion said, yeah, I stung you. And the frog says, why did you sting me? And the scorpion says, I don't know. It's my nature, It's my svadharma. It's who I am. It's what I do. So you can't change your nature. Arjuna can't change his nature. So Krishna's moral conclusion is, you have to fight. There's nothing else available for you but to do your duty and fight. But as he goes along in his argument, Krishna begins explaining to Arjuna that when you do your duty, you should do it with Atmagyan. Take that Atmagyan that now I've explained to you and put that together with your duty so that now you're doing your duty with Atmagyan. And we're going to call this Buddhi Yoga. And later on, you'll see how what I'm telling you about Buddhi Yoga, that matures into divine love. Real Buddhi Yoga, if you really use your intelligence while you're doing your work without any attachment, in sacrifice, you'll begin to understand what divine love is. But here he's, I'm getting ahead of myself. He says, Ascharyavat paschati kaschit enam. This is a great verse. Ascharyavat vadati tataiva chanya. Ascharyavat chainamanya shrinoti. Shrut vapi enam veda. Nachaiva kaschit. So he says here, some speak about the soul with amazement. The word ascharyavat, it means, what is the soul? It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's a miracle. Now, this is not a sectarian statement. This has nothing to do with Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam. You can just take that as a standalone piece of wisdom. The soul is a miracle. Go outside, look around, walk into your garden. You'll see miracles everywhere. People want a justification for God or a miracle. A piece of the true cross can, cure you from cancer. But that's not the miracle. The miracle is that you're walking and talking and that you can see things and feel them. The miracle is that you're alive and you're surrounded by life, that you can walk into your garden and see roses and lotuses and a blue sky. You can see clouds crossing the moon and look at that and think, that's a miracle. You can give me a mundane explanation for the creation, and that's all well and good, but that I can participate, that I can see that I can walk around in it, that I can speak to people from China, Ireland, Mexico, Russia, Ukraine, while I'm sitting in the same place. That's a miracle. So the soul is miraculous. And Krishna says, some people can realize that. Some people, they don't understand the nature of the soul, but they can speak about it and say, that's amazing. Others hear about it and think, that's amazing. And yet, nobody really knows what the soul is. Shrutvapyanam Vedana Chaiva Kaschit. Even hearing about it, we don't really get it. So he's telling Arjuna, but I'm giving you this knowledge. Even if you don't understand it right now, you will. Dehi nityam avadyo yam dehi sarvasya bharata tasvat sarvani bhutani natvam shochitam arhasi. So the soul can never be killed. So don't lament. And it's a terrible thing to say. When somebody dies, one of our friends or our mother or father, and another devotee says, well, that's okay. He's in a better place now. That's very cold. It doesn't give me any comfort. I remember when my mother died, my first impulse after I came home from having buried her, my first impulse was I wanted to call her on the phone and say, you'll never guess what happened. But I couldn't. And to tell me, oh, she's in a better place now, it doesn't really give me any comfort. But as you meditate on the eternal soul, you will find some comfort there, right? So Krishna says, Svadharman apichaveksha navi kampitum arhasi dharam yad di yudach treyo nyat katriyasya navidyate. He's saying, so don't have any fear. Do your duty. Do your svadharma. And everyone has a different svadharma. Mommies have to take care of their babies. That's your svadharma. You have to take care of your babies. You can't abandon your children. You're not supposed to say, oh, I have a higher cause now. I love Krishna. I'm going to abandon my children. Because what happens? You join an ashram, you meditate for a couple of years, you meet a beautiful person in the ashram who just loves Krishna, and he's a saint, and you think, I want to be like him, and you fall in love. And then after a while, you have more babies, and you have to do it again. No, take care of your svadharma. Don't abandon that. That's what Krishna's telling you here. So if you're a mommy, be a good mommy. If you're a baby, be a good baby. If you're a teacher, be a good teacher. If you're a Shudra, don't pretend that you're a Kshatriya. You're born in some faraway place outside India, and you know nothing about real spiritual values. And at some point you read the Bhagavad Gita and think, yeah, that's me, I'm Arjuna. I'm going to get a sword and a gun and go out and kill people for Krishna. No, that's not what Krishna's saying. He's saying if you're a worker, okay, try to be a good worker. Work within the framework that you've been given. Don't try to change your nature. But couple that with Atma Gyan. Discover the Paramatma in the Atma Gyan. Learn to do sacrifice. So then he's got these verses. He says, so if Svadharma kirtim cha hitva papa avapyasi. If you don't take part in this holy war, then you will be sinful. And akirti chapi bhutani, people will speak about your infamy. And for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. The other people will talk about you. But these arguments are not the highest arguments in the Bhagavad Gita to tell Arjuna, oh, you know what? Other people are going to talk about you. Watch out. Because in the end, we don't really care what other people say. But Krishna's putting everything in the mix here. He's convincing his friend, and it's a conversation. So sometimes in a conversation, we go back and forth and try to make different points. He says, Avachyavadams chabahun. They'll speak unspeakable words about you. And this goes back to what he says before when he says, Pragyavadams chabashase. You're speaking pragyavadams. You're giving us all these beautiful ideas, Arjuna, but you're not doing your duty. So he's throwing that back at him. They're going to say things about you too. And think about this. If you're killed, you'll go to heaven. This is Kushetra, it's a holy place. Be equal. This is a nice verse. Sukha dukkha same kritva. He says, be equal in happiness and distress. So oftentimes we hear, what's the goal of life? The goal of life is to be happy. So let's be happy. But you can't be happy all the time. It doesn't work like that. You know, as we say in the United States, shit happens. You can't be happy all the time. It's impractical to try to be happy all the time. If your baby's crying and you want to chant Hare Krishna and meditate, you can't do it. You have to take care of the crying baby, right? But that's all right. That's sacrifice, isn't it? Sacrifice is distressful. If when you go into your garden to dig out the weeds in the hot sun, it's distressful. But later on, oh, you get to enjoy the fruit. It's interesting because the word in Spanish for enjoyment is disfrutar. It means to take the fruit. And people are always telling me this. They're saying, you know, hey, teacher, disfrute su vida. Enjoy your life. And I want to tell them, it's not about taking the fruit. Krishna tells us later, don't be attached to the fruit. Do it. If you're a musician, do it. Be a musician. Don't worry about the fame. If you're giving a talk on the Bhagavad Gita on a Zoom class, don't worry about how many people are watching, or if they're on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. That's not the important thing. Give a good talk. Try to connect with people. So be equal in happiness. And he says, not just happiness, distress. Labha, labo, jaya, jayo. It's really beautiful the way Sanskrit combines words. So we get things like mumbo jumbo, you know, jaya, jayo means victory or defeat. If you're defeated, you lost. Don't go around with a big loser sign painted on your head. I'm a loser. Oh God, I'm a loser. You know, you have to go on. You have to do your thing, do your dharma, be who you are. Of course, you know, again, this is, you know, he's helping Arjuna a little bit with the samsaric conception of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. But suddenly he changes his tone. So there's three things to keep in mind in this section of the Gita. And I'm trying to get to the 41st or 42nd verse. But Krishna changes his tone. He says, okay, enlightened with Atmagyan, do your duty in a disinterested way. Know that the soul is eternal and the world is temporary. But do your duty with excellence and don't expect anything in return. That's how you become free from bondage. So he calls this Buddhi Yoga. And he says, Esha te bihita sankye, buddhir yoge, tvimam shrinu, buddha yukto yaya parta, karma bandham prahasyasi. This is how you get free from karma bandham, from the bondage of karma bondage. He says, so far, I've given you the count. Sankhya Yoga is also the name of this chapter. Sankhya, it means counting. Samyak Kyayate. It means analysis. So what are we analyzing? We're looking at the nature of the soul. We're looking at the nature of the Paramatma. And we're also sort of analyzing your duty and your position in the world, or your dharma. So Krishna says, what I've given you so far, I'm going to call that Buddhi Yoga, smart yoga, or intelligent yoga. And so I've told you all about Atmagyan. Now you understand the soul is eternal. Nobody can be killed. But you have to do your duty, not just in knowledge, but in a detached state without expecting any earthly result. And this is nishkama karma yoga, technically. So the Vedas explain how to get what you want by sacrificing something, but that's a partial truth. You get something there, but you're stuck in the cycle of birth and death. Nishkama karma yoga, when it's paired with Atma Gyan, leads to a higher understanding called Buddhi yoga. And this is really the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why the second chapter ties everything together. And there's a comment here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, just to put things in perspective, so you understand what's being said. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, it will be revealed that Buddhi yoga, or the yoga of wisdom, is a singular path. When Buddhi yoga is seen to be limited by the ideal of action, it's called karma yoga. When it extends beyond action to the highest point of knowledge, it's known as jnana yoga or sankhya. And when transcending the limitations of both action and knowledge, it touches bhakti or devotion. It is then known as bhakti yoga or perfect and complete Buddhi yoga. So Krishna is giving this sort of catch-all term here. And he says, he calls it Buddhi yoga. But the idea is, if you can act in knowledge, and if your action takes you to sacrifice, that sacrifice can become love. And divine love or dedication is really where he's going with all this. So then he has this one verse which I really like. And this can give you some comfort. He says, Nehabi kramanashosti pratyavayo navidyate shvalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. So he says, in this process, there's no loss if you stop. If you start the process and then you have a problem, it's okay. There's no sin incurred by imperfection. And this gets translated differently. One is protected from birth and death, even by practicing a little of this process. That's one way to look at it. Prabhupada put it like this: in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So just like riding a bicycle, you never forget how to do it. Or, walking, I suppose. But I like the example of riding a bicycle, because even if you haven't ridden a bicycle in 20 years, you still know how to do it. Or swimming. There's some things that once you take to them, it becomes part of you. And Krishna consciousness is like that. Once you've surrendered in Krishna consciousness, you can try to do something else or settle into a different routine, but you'll always remember the taste of Krishna consciousness. So even if the process is started but not completed, there's no lack of result. And Krishna says, Chayate machato bayat. This will save you from the greatest fear. And other commentators, they make the point that, well, what's the greatest fear? It's repeated birth and death. Okay? You do something bad, maybe you'll reincarnate in a lower life form. Or you'll take birth as an animal or something like that. So that's the greatest fear, Mahato Bayat. And that's the standard take on that. Bhaya means fear, like Abhaya Charananda Naravinder, Prabhupada's name, the greatest fear. But Sridhar Maharaj here, he doesn't like that. He can let that commentary stand. But the purpose of the commentary is to point something out. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, no, Mahato Bayat is not fear of getting a low birth. It's not fear of being reincarnated. He says, Mahato Bayat also refers to Sayuja Mukti, or liberation, merging into the impersonal, non-differentiated consciousness. In other words, Mahobayat is the same as nirvana. It's nothingness. So Krishna consciousness will free you from having to disappear into the nothingness of nirvana, or the suicide of samadhi. He says, renunciation alone leads to Sayuja Mukti, or going beyond birth and death, but not to life in a positive plane. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote this book called Prapana Jivanamrita, which I have over here. And just a nice verse in here that I thought I read from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda says, Veda Vidyanusare Kama Kariye Sangsare Jiva Puna Puna Janma Pai Purva Kriti Karma Fale Tomar Vaichabale Janma Jari Labi Punarai. I won't read the whole thing, but he says, according to Vedic injunction, who acts out his worldly function, that soul takes birth again and again, according to my previous action or your divine predilection. If another birth for me does remain, then just one thing I have to say, oh, hear me, Lord, if you may. If within the home of your devotee I may be born in an insect body, that cannot but be your mercy. In my heart, I'll ever be happy. Devoid of your devotee's company in an ignorant non-devotee's family, to be born as even Brahma, the creator. For that, O Lord, I'll never ask you, with folded hands now before you. This is the earnest prayer of your servitor, Bhaktivinoda. So, if the Mahato Bayat, if the greatest fear is rebirth, Bhaktivinoda says, I'm okay with that, but let me be born again in the family of a devotee. What's the name of your little boy there, Rajasundari?
Lakshman.
Lakshman.
Prabhu.
Let me be born as Lakshman in the family of Brajasundari. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's aspiring for a birth in the family of devotees. I don't mind birth, old age, disease, the threefold miseries, mosquitoes, the tax man, the coronavirus and its vaccine. I'll do all that again, as long as I can do that in the home of a devotee, where I can participate in the kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's the Mahato Bayat, not to be able to do that. That would be the great fear. But here Krishna says, just do a little dedication. Do something. Nehabi kramanashosti pratyavaya navidyate svalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. Do a little dedication. And if there's any fear in your heart, Arjun, about doing your duty, leave that. There's no fear here. So I was going to try to go up to like the 42nd verse, but the Bhagavad Gita is very dense. It's really packed with a lot of meaning. But basically here in the first part of the second chapter, there's three ideas that are being given. One is Atmagyan and Paramatmagyan. And then Krishna tells Arjuna, do it, be who you are. Don't be anybody else. You know, you can't be anybody else because that's already taken. You know, so don't imitate others. Do your duty. And then he takes it to a higher stage. He says, by the way, doing your duty with Atmagyan, it's a new thing. We're going to call that Buddhi Yoga. And the idea of Buddhi Yoga gets expanded through the entire Bhagavad Gita. There's a chapter on Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Sannyas Yoga, you know, Ashtanga Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. But all of that is really an extension of this idea. That's the thread that runs through the entire Bhagavad Gita, or the Siddhanta. And you'll look at other people's versions of the Bhagavad Gita, and they just take it as a collection of interesting quotable quotes, different fragments. Like, oh, here Krishna says, you know, do your work. And over there he says, the soul is eternal. But there's no real, you know, thread running through the whole book. There's no thesis. But, you know, we encourage you to read the Bhagavad Gita, keeping in mind that particular thesis. Do your work, but do it as a sacrifice, and try to do that with spiritual knowledge. And I took up an hour of your time, and so please forgive me. An hour is a long time to try to sit and listen to anybody. But if anyone, I see in the chat, there's a bunch of notes in Russian here. У нас есть перевод на русский язык, его можно получить в правой нижней части экрана. I don't know. So, do we want to do questions, or shall we just say adios, farewell, goodbye, sayonara, dos vidania?
Actually, we have a question from me.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So sometimes my children are asking questions, and I'm becoming like bewildered because of these questions, because they're studying in Israel kindergartens and in Israel schools. And from the very early age, they are being taught Jewish tradition and some elements from Judaism, also about the God creator and all other things. And so once my daughter asked me, Mommy, was it Krishna who created us? And I remember that it is said that we are eternal. But if we are eternal, how can we be created by anybody? So I don't understand how to answer and what is right.
Okay. Well, those are very nice questions. How old is your daughter?
Now she's 6.5, and she asked it at about 6.
She's 6 years old. Okay. Well, there's a lot of different questions packed into one, right? So how does the creation go on? Well, try to understand that who you are as Atma, that's eternal, that means you were not created. okay, in the sense that I create a guitar or a house or something like that. The example is given of the sun and sunshine. So try to see it like that. You're sunshine. God is the sun. Okay? In terms of spiritual reality. In terms of material reality, there are a lot of very complicated mechanisms going on, right? You can say that how exactly those mechanisms take place may have originated with what these people over here call God. They like to think of it like that. Since the mechanisms of creation are hard to understand, you can read about that later in the Bhagavad Gita. But if somebody says that a divine power exists in back of this creation, that's okay. We don't have any debate with that. But we're really talking about two different things. The soul as such is eternal. So it's like this, God is like the sun and you're like the sunshine. You can tell your daughter, you are sunshine, my daughter. God is like the sun. As far as the mechanical, how did it all happen? That's an interesting thing to study. It's a good subject for children to look at, to just say, oh, there was one God and he did it all in 7 days. It's a little too easy, right? Look at the explanation in the Mahabharata. Read it. It's pretty fascinating. Take a look at the Bhagavad Gita. That's pretty fascinating. Noah and the ark? Well, I don't know. I have a hard time sitting down with my family and eating. What were the animals on the ark eating? What did the lion have for lunch? Was he okay with the lamb sitting over there? Or did he just go, I'm sorry, lamb, I'm hungry now. Rumph. And then what happened? So how is it possible that you put all the tigers and all the lions and all the bears in with all the little birds and the little rabbits and the donkeys? That part, we can call that mythology. We can say, okay, well, look, these people have their mythology. Mythology is a deep subject. Some people think of it as a way to explain things. We Hindus also have our mythology. Any genuine mythology that's lasted for thousands and thousands of years has very deep metaphoric and, meaning, parables, analogies, things that you're supposed to think about. So reflect on that, my daughter. Think about that, my child. Don't believe everything the teachers tell you. Listen to Mahayogi. I don't know if that question had a lot of moving parts, so I don't know if I answered it, but tell her it's very simple. You're like sunshine. The soul is sunshine. God is the sun. As far as how the creation was done, here, take a piece of paper and make it into a box. That's creation. Can you do it? Well, this is a very complicated creation, Was there an invisible man in the sky who made the flowers? I don't know, but there's something inside that flower, isn't there? Take a seed, do an experiment. Take a seed, put the seed into some earth and add some water, and you will see the soul inside that seed will become a flower. How is that possible? Ascharyavat paschati kaschat anima. Krishna said, it's a miracle. The soul is a miracle. Think on it, you know? And that should give you some inspiration. So anyways, that's the best I can do off the top of my head.
Thank you. Lilavati Devidasi from Israel wrote, accept my obeisances. Your commentaries on Bhagavad Gita makes many things and many questions which I have had very clear. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for tuning in. And I'm told we have fewer people in the Zoom because there's thousands of millions of people out there on Facebook who are waving incense at the computer and going, wow, this is so cool. So the fortunate folks who are with me here on the Zoom, thank you very much. Again, Pranashish from the Emerald Isle of Saints and Scholars and Poets, Ireland. And we've got, I don't know if you're in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, but Israel is with Braja Sundari and Praneshwari Devi Dasi. I don't know where she is. She's got this giant Tulsi tree behind her. She's just sending this divine vibration towards us all with the giant Tulsi Devi. And then in the northern countries of Russia, there's Pritu Das from St. Petersburg, land of Dostoevsky and Pushkin. Yeah. So another thing I think about when, like, Nehabi Kamonashasti Pratyavayo Navidyate, that verse is that a man is judged according, or a woman is judged according to the ideal that they have. So we have a very high ideal. We don't just think of God as some angry old man who will strike you down if you do sin, but we're thinking, if I can dedicate my life to Krishna, then I can go play with Krishna. Raghupati Upadhyay, he says, I'm not so sure about the Vedas. They're very difficult to interpret, but I want to know more about Nanda Maharaj. What did Nanda Maharaj do that he has the Supreme Personality of Godhead playing in his garden as a little boy? What was his austerity? What was his prayer? How did he go about getting the position that he has, where God himself is stealing yogurt and running around in his garden? And so having a high ideal and striving for that is a very noble thing. And Dostoevsky was a great Russian writer, but he said, I could never reach Cervantes, because Cervantes invented Don Quixote. And Don Quixote is someone who has this crazy ideal. He wants to restore the world to the golden age, and he's willing to fight for that, which is madness. But he's revered in all literature as having had the greatest ideal. But our ideal is far higher than that. So you can search all the literature everywhere, and you'll never find a higher ideal than the one given in Bhagavad Gita, which makes it my favorite book. And that's why I like trying to talk about it. So thank you very much, Braja Sundari, for giving me the opportunity. So any last questions? Or?
No, actually, we don't have any more questions. Thank you, Prabhu, for participating. By Gurudev, because everything is by his grace.
Jai. Hare Krishna to everybody. And, bless you and thank you for giving me a chance and pray for my soul. All right. So we'll say adios.
Jai, Jai Mahayogi Prabhu ki Jai. Jai. Okay, thank you very much. Please accept our Dandavat pranams and see you next week at the same time on Friday. Please accept our Dandavats. Bye-bye. Hare Krishna.